Hello everyone, Vincent here from HDTVTest here. I've returned from the 2019 TV Shootout in London, freshened up, and now I'm ready to talk about the results and how things went. I know there are going to be many questions from you guys, but I think it is important for me to thank several parties involved because of the time and preparation needed to put together such an event. So in the first instance, obviously I would like to thank the organizer for the event, who is UK electrical retailer Crampton and Moore, particularly the Leeds store. So thank you very much, David, Vicky, Sam, and also a custom installer based in Leeds called Chris Bradley, who took their time out on a weekend to put together the event. They were extremely proficient and efficient in actually putting up the stands and mounting the televisions, and I don't know how they did it so efficiently. I was never really any good with my hands. That's what she said. But I was just, admiring their handiwork, and I was so afraid that one of the TVs got broken during the mounting process, and then I would have to go out to John Lewis or Curry's and buy one to complete the shootout. But fortunately, everything went smoothly and we had the 4 displays intact for the shootout. And next, I would also like to thank Tyler Pruitt from Project Displays. Project Displays obviously is the company who is responsible for the Kalman calibration software, who amazingly has an autocal system in place for all 4 TV brands that we were comparing in the shootout, namely LG, Panasonic, Samsung, and Sony. So for all these TVs, Kalman actually has a home version where you can purchase a calorimeter and calibrate these TVs yourself. And I can think of no one else other than Tyler who knows the ins and outs of the calibration software when it comes to calibrating these televisions. Also, I would like to thank Maciej Koper from HDTVPolska.com. He purposely flew in from Warsaw in Poland to help out in this event, and he is one of the few calibrators and TV reviewers in the world who I respect the most in terms of his technical knowledge and also his experience with studio monitors, including the Sony BVM X300 that we were using in the shootout. Last but not least, I would like to thank a few parties who also provided us with equipment for the event. First of all, CYP Europe, who provided 1 to 10 HDMI distribution amplifier and also many premium HDMI cables for use at this event, and also BTech, who provided the stands on which we mounted the televisions. I would also like to express my gratitude towards Scenic Labs in America, who kindly supplied 5 copies of the Spears & Mansell UHD HDR benchmark disc and also 5 units of the Media Light bias lighting as giveaways for attendees who correctly guessed the televisions. So with my appreciation out of the way, I think next I want to talk about how we set up the TVs and how they were arranged. So from left to right, it was the Samsung Q90R, and then the Panasonic GZ2000, and then in the center we have the Sony BVM X300 reference broadcast monitor. That is an RGB OLED based monitor, which has been widely used in the post-production community in major Hollywood studios to master content up to 1000 nits. And then to the right we will have the LG C9, and at the far right we will have the Sony AG9. And all these TVs being compared are 65 inches in screen size for a level playing field. We covered up the bezels of all these televisions because they are mounted on BTech stands, so no one would know which TV was which. And indeed, out of 38 attendees who attended this event, who voted at this event, only 9 guessed the orders of the televisions correctly. And this just goes to show, genuinely, until the last second, no one knew what TV was what, which one was the Panasonic, which one was the LG, which one was the Sony, and which one was the Samsung. And to avoid the pop-up notifications, alerting the attendees from knowing which TV is which when I was changing sources, when I'm putting in a new disc, when I'm switching between, say, 50 Hz and 24 Hz. We took care to close an electric curtain so that I do the source switching behind the curtain, and then only when I'm happy that the video loop is in place and there are no clues to give away the identities of the set, that we open the electric curtains. Also, we placed a barrier in front of the televisions to prevent attendees from going around the sides to try and take a peek of the bezel, the thickness of the chassis, which may give them an idea of which TV is which. And these barriers have a tape, and I think it looked like a crime scene. But the only crime that we have committed on that day is not calibrating Dolby Vision, because one of the sets don't support Dolby Vision. And without further ado, let's get into the... All right, before I forget, I want to say that obviously we only have one reference broadcast monitor at the event. In an ideal world, I would like to get two, but unfortunately this year we can only get our hands on one, so we have to place it in the center. And therefore the farmost sets are a bit further than the nearest sets to the monitor, but I asked the attendees to stand up and watch in front of each TV and then compare with the monitor for a direct comparison. This is different from maybe other blinded shootouts that you have attended in the past, where you were sat in a seat. You are not actually allowed to stand up and look at the televisions directly on axis, and therefore even OLEDs, they will have some blue tint of axis. How can you judge color accuracy if you're not actually allowed to stand in front of the television? Also, other blinded shootouts may not have a reference broadcast monitor for comparison. We have a BVM X300 there. It's the gold standard really, and we can judge black level, how deep the black should be, the shadow detail, how bright the shadow detail should be, and the color accuracy, just how saturated, how much the hue should change with each color. So I believe that by having the X300 there, again, in an ideal world, I would have liked two X300, one between each TV. But this year, because of limited resources, we could only get our hands on one. So without further ado, let's get into the results and the scoring criteria and the different categories that were being scored. So the first category that we were judging was black level and shadow detail. And the scene we used to judge black level and shadow detail, I combined these two because there's no point having inky blacks if you are crushing the shadow detail. So I combined these two subcategories into one. And the scenes that we used were, in the first instance, a beautiful planet. It is a HDR10 Plus disc, but we were playing through our Oppo 203 player in HDR10, static metadata to all the sets. And then for shadow detail, in addition, we were using a very challenging scene from The Darkest Hour, where attendees were meant to see the gradation in the umbrella, and also the umbrella stem, and also the pinstripes on Winston Churchill's suit. And they should be comparing against the reference broadcast monitor to see how bright or how dark these elements should be. So for this category, the LG C9 scored top with 4.69, and the Panasonic GZ2000 came second with 4.31 points, and the LG came third with 4.03 points, and coming in final place was the Samsung Q90R with 2.63 points. And let me talk about color accuracy first before I actually start explaining the results. So for color accuracy, we used a scene from Kingsman where there are multiple people standing in rows, and there are various skin tones, various clothings, various colors for attendees to judge against a reference broadcast monitor. Again, this disc is mastered to around 1000 nits, and so it could be used as a 1:1 reference to judge skin tones and also colors. And again, the LG C9 came top at 4.47, the Panasonic GZ GZ2000 came second at 4.36 points. The Sony AG9 came third with 4.28 points, and the Samsung Q90R came last at 2.92 points. And I think, I forgot to explain what these points means. So when attendees are asked to judge these attributes, let's say they are asked to judge black level, they can score it from 1 to 5, and 5 being the score to be reserved for the best TV. So let's say if TV A was the best, then you would score it 5, and then TV B, TV C, TV D, you would just rank it relative to the 5 that TVA received. So let's say if TVB was slightly worse, you may give it a score of 4. And these scores are total across 38 attendees and then divided by 38 to arrive at the average score. And what I was reading out earlier was the average score. And so I think the question on top of most people's mind will be, how can the LG C9 beat the Panasonic GZ2000, which is meant to be extremely accurate with class-leading accuracy in terms of the black level, the shadow detail, and also the color accuracy. But bear in mind that we have used calibration to level the playing field. So for the LG C9, it tracked PQ correctly and all the colors are hitting the dots. Next, we come to tone mapping. For 1000 nit tone mapping, we used the scene from the darkest hour again, where there is bright sunlight streaming through a curtain, and the attendees were asked to see just how bright the sunlight is and also how much detail in the curtain is retained. I'm telling you, it's extremely challenging for me to actually go through so many films to try and find scenes that can push these displays to the limit. Obviously, I could settle for a normal scene and it doesn't reach 1000 nits, it doesn't push these displays to their limit, but then again, you wouldn't see any difference between the sets. And you wouldn't believe the amount of movies that I have actually trawled through. I've painstakingly gone through, fast-forwarded, rewind to try and find scenes like this. And I've really absolutely gone through some utter dross out there. But this scene is, I think, a good scene to test the 1000 nit tone mapping. And for 4000 nit tone mapping, we used a scene from the Mac, and I think this is a movie that some people will like, some people won't. But there is this particular scene here with bright sunshine against the shark cage, and again we are judging how the TV is tone mapping these details to retain both the brightness and also the specular highlight detail in terms of the shark cage. And for this test, we turned off the Sony BVM X300 because it would just hard clip above 1000 nits, and we are judging 4000 nits tone mapping. So combining and averaging the scores for the 1000 nit and 4000 nit tone mapping, the top TV was the Panasonic GZ2000 with 4.32 points, and the second TV was the LG C9 with 4.11 points. Third comes the Samsung Q90R with 3.51 points, and in last place was actually the Sony AG9, which has more tendency to blow out the specular highlight details because that is Sony's philosophy. Now let me explain how the LG C9 came so close to the Panasonic GZ2000 in terms of the tone mapping. Obviously, in my opinion, the GZ2000 had the best 1000 nit and 4000 nit tone mapping in terms of balancing between the specular highlight detail and also the overall brightness. But for the LG C9, we actually utilized the tone curve adjustment feature that has been developed by LG Electronics in conjunction with portrait displays in Kalman, and we set the tone curve in terms of the value for 1000 nits and 4000 nits and 10,000 nits separately to achieve the sort of effect that made it come so close to the reference broadcast monitor and push the Panasonic GZ2000. Obviously, these tone curves values were entirely different from the default tone curve value, and the default tone curve value would actually blow out the detail even more. So, I mean, obviously, this is my secret sauce. This is our secret sauce, and I think if you hire me for calibrating your C9, I will be utilizing these tone curves to make sure that you get the best, say, balance of speckle highlight detail and overall brightness. And I want to stress that I turned off dynamic tone mapping for the LG C9 entirely, because I think dynamic tone mapping, although it produces a pleasing result, at the end of the day, it is actually manipulating the tone curve. And when you are referencing it to a reference broadcast monitor, it will either produce a picture that is either too dark or too bright. So that is from the tone mapping, and next we come to motion. For motion, I really wanted to separate it into 24 Hz motion and also 50 Hz motion, because 24 Hz motion is for film, 50 Hz motion is what we get in broadcast TV and also sports content we get in PAL regions in the UK. So the top TV was the Sony AG9 with 4.15 points. The second TV was the Panasonic GZ2000 with 4.12 points. And the third TV was the LG C9 with 4.05 points. And coming in last was the Samsung Q90R with 3.62 points. Again, the OLEDs were quite close, but I think, the Sony AG9 took home the best motion. And again, this reinforced my opinion that Sony TVs in general have the best motion. And remember that these motion categories were all judged without people actually knowing whether it is the Sony TV or not. So I think this validates our opinion that Sony TVs generally have the best motion handling. And next comes the category of uniformity. And with uniformity, we used a couple of clips, one from Star Trek Beyond, where there's a slow panning shot across the space and it is slightly just above black. So this would actually highlight any thin vertical streaks or near black uniformity issues on any of the sets. And again, I want to stress that the Panasonic GZ2000 performed the best in this regard. The Panasonic GZ2000 that we used at the event was a retail sample, but the one that I'm reviewing in my own test lab also had such clean uniformity. Is by far the cleanest uniformity that I've seen near black from any OLEDs. And I think this was picked up by the attendees and they awarded it with the highest score, bright uniformity. We just basically looked at the panning shots in football field when we were watching football for 50 Hz motion. And I am not a fan of actually using test patterns, or let's say full field gray slides, in these events to try and highlight uniformity issues, because I believe that if you can't see it in content, then that should be good enough. And I have already selected the toughest content to show up near black uniformity and bright uniformity issues. So for uniformity, the top score was obtained correctly by the Panasonic GZ2000 with 4.25 points. And in second place comes the Sony AG9 with 3.96 points. And in third place was the LG C9 with 3.8 points. And in fourth place was the Samsung Q90R with 3.44 points, presumably of more dirty screen effect in the brighter scenes. Then we come to video processing, and for video processing, basically we were using content to judge the upscaling, and also we judged gradation during those scenes where we were watching 4K Blu-rays. And the top score was obtained by the Panasonic GZ2000 with 3.92 points. And in second place was the Sony AG9 with 3.85 points. Third place was the LG C9 with 3.63 points. And in fourth place was the Samsung Q90R with 3.6 points. And I believe that the score of the Panasonic GZ2000 probably would have been higher were it not for some posterization issue around the sun in Kingsman. And I showed people that if I actually reduced the luminance level, which is the OLED light on the Panasonic GZ2000, I could reduce the posterization of banding around the sun in this scene from Kingsman. But then again, if I lowered the luminance level from the calibrated level of 100, it would also darken the entire picture and darken the whole PQ EOTF tracking. So we didn't do that, and I am not sure what is causing this, but I will hopefully be able to cover it in my review of the Panasonic GZ2000. This is not only isolated to the Kingsman. I have a couple of other titles where I've actually seen it, but again, I will cover it in my review of the Panasonic GZ2000. And although this instance is very rare, it's just unfortunate that it was actually present in the footage that we used. So in the next section is the gaming section. For the section, we measured the input lag. Also, we asked the attendees, the voters, to assess the picture quality based on Mortal Kombat played in HDR from the Microsoft Xbox One X. And unsurprisingly, because of the class-leading input lag of 13 milliseconds, the LG C9 came in first place with 4.67 points, which is a massive lead over the second place with 3.92 points obtained by the Panasonic GZ2000. In third place was the Samsung Q90R, and in fourth place was the Sony AG9 with 3.39 points because its input lag is the highest at 27 milliseconds. And then in the last section, we assessed all the sets for bright room performance. Under the bright room performance, we took into account light output. Basically, when you bring a smartphone out to try and read anything under the bright sun, the screen brightness needs to be increased. So light output is extremely important for proper use of a TV in a bright room. Also, we assessed the anti-reflection by displaying a dark scene and asked the attendees to see how much reflections they can see from the sets. And also, new for this year, we added a subcategory called luminance stability, because while we were testing these TVs, while we were calibrating these TVs, we spotted that some OLEDs would actually slowly drop their light output off, even though we have lowered the logo luminance adjustment or switched it off, or tried our best to disable, say, dynamic contrast and eco solution and any other eco sensor, ambient light sensing feature or controls in the TVs. Obviously, it's a measure that has been implemented to counter image retention or permanent screen burn or burn-in, but I think at the end of the day, some people may feel that this is detrimental to the picture quality because the picture becomes darker, especially for consumption in a bright room. So I've added a subcategory for attendees to score this when we were, say, watching football or 50 Hz broadcast with static logos over 5 to 10 minutes. And in first place for the bright room category, unsurprisingly, was the Samsung QLED LED LCD with 4.37 points. In second place was the LG C9 with 3.75 points. In third place was the Panasonic GZ2000 with 3.69 points. And in fourth place was the Sony AG9 with 3.47 points. So these are the results for the subcategories, and we have the individual awards to give out. There is a slight overlap between the best home theater TV and the best HDR TV, and maybe next year I will get rid of one of these categories. But for the best home theater TV, what I really want to emphasize is critical viewing in a dark room. So we emphasize more on, let's say, the dark uniformity and also the 24 frames per second motion handling in terms of the smoothness and detail retention. And the best home theater TV went to the Panasonic GZ2000 with 20.84 points. Just pipping the LG C9, the LG C9 got 20.81 points, and I believe that it is the dark uniformity, the supremely clean dark uniformity of the Panasonic GZ2000 that won it this category, in addition obviously to its black level performance and also its color accuracy. And then in third place was the Sony AG9, and coming in dead last was the Samsung Q90R, because with its black level and contrast performance just isn't going to beat the pixel level control of the OLEDs in a totally dark room or dimly lit room. So the next category is the best living room TV. For this category, I want to reward a TV that performs better in a bright room and also who can handle the compressed content better. Let's say we were playing a compressed clip, and it would handle the gradation and the near black better. And this award was also taken by the Panasonic GZ2000 with 23.73 points. In second place comes the Samsung Q90R with 23.44 points, mostly probably on account of its bright room performance. In third place was the Sony AG9 with 22.86 points. And in fourth place was the LG C9 with 22.43 points. And I think that this is broadly representative of the video processing prowess and also the bright room capabilities when it comes to handling, say, sports motion, let's say handling non-pristine content. And the third award, Best Gaming TV, I think there's only one clear winner here, which is the LG C9 with 4.67 points. The Panasonic GZ2000 came second with 3.92. The Samsung Q90R came third with 3.66, and the Sony AG9 came fourth with 3.39 points. And then for Best HDR TV, I think there is a very large overlap with the Best Home Theater TV, because this year we are primarily focusing on HDR content anyway, whereas with previous years we were using, say, SDR content to judge black level, to judge color accuracy. But I think as more and more people migrate to high-end sets, they are going to be watching more, say, 4K Blu-rays or, say, HDR streaming from Netflix. And so I believe that it is more important for us to use HDR content to start judging black level, shadow detail, and color accuracy. And also, I think with SDR content, the performance between the sets are going to be more similar, and it is with HDR content where you push these TVs to their limits that you see more differences between black level, shadow detail, and color accuracy. So for Best HDR TV, I think what I particularly like to place importance on are the 1000 nit and 4000 nit tone mapping, and also the gradation in terms of the smoothness in gradients when it comes to watching all types of HDR content. And in first place was the LG C9 with 17.34. In second place was the Panasonic GZ2000 with 16.81. In third place was Sony AG9 with 15.05. In fourth place was the Samsung Q90R with 12.74. Now, this result might surprise some of you, because in theory, maybe the Panasonic GZ2000 with its higher measured peak brightness maybe should have taken this category. But I think it was actually hurt by the polarization and bending that was seen near the sun in bright specular content on certain 1000 plus nit content. And also, despite its higher measured peak brightness, I think in real life content, the advantage is going to be very subtle, because at the end of the day, there are different tone mapping algorithms at play. And these OLEDs, even though you can try and lower the aggressiveness of the ABL, ultimately full screen brightness is still going to be limited at around 150 to 160 nits. So the difference is not as stark as, let's say, a 10% measurement would make it out to be. So the LG C9 took the Best HDR TV award in front of the Panasonic GZ2000. So obviously, the Best TV of 2019 is the award that most manufacturers want. And this year, the LG C9 was voted as the Best TV of 2019 with a total point of 33.16. In second place came the Panasonic GZ2000 with 32.90. In third place was the Sony AG9 with 30.16 points. And in fourth place was the Samsung Q90R with 27.75 points. And congratulations to LG Electronics with their C9 OLED for winning the Best TV of 2019 in this blinded shootout as voted by 38 attendees. And I think the Korean brand has put in a lot of work to implement new features, innovative features, and also to improve their picture quality on their sets. So LG OLEDs are generally the only OLEDs on the market to have true HDMI 2.1 that supports most of the major HDMI 2.1 features in terms of, let's say, VRR, variable refresh rate, enhanced ARC, auto low latency mode, and also support of 4K at 120 Hz resolution. Obviously, we are not scoring a bunch of this, but the input lag is the lowest at 13 milliseconds. and they have done a lot of things, let's say adding near black dithering to improve the near black gradation to try and suppress the near black chrominance issue. And so I think it has allowed it to close the gap to the Panasonic, and also with the autocal calibration feature and also tone curve adjustment that has been developed by the South Korean brand in conjunction with Pruitt displays. This allowed it to genuinely match the Panasonic GZ2000 in terms of the color accuracy, shadow detail rendition, and tone mapping. So congratulations again to the engineers at LG Electronics for coming out with such a well-rounded product. And I think with all shootouts, there are always going to be detractors, especially their preconceived TVs didn't win the shootout or didn't do so well at the shootout. So let me address these criticisms of our shootout one by one. So I think someone said that the audience is not qualified. Basically they were people from the Joe public, people who weren't that into picture quality voting in the shootout. But bear in mind that there are 38 attendees who voted in the shootout, and the majority actually know their HDMI from their HDCP, they know their QLED from their OLED, and I think there were a couple of attendees there that were THX certified. They are actually well versed with the calibration process, and many attendees were familiar faces that I've seen from previous shootouts before. And most of these attendees, they probably have watched me on my YouTube channel, so they would have absorbed some of the things that I've been saying. And obviously there are a few people who were less knowledgeable about video fidelity, about what they were actually looking for. But overall, when you average the scores over 38, I think it is representative of what I believe is a good mix of, say, video enthusiasts, professionals, industry people, and also say the average Joe. And if you ask the opinion of true professionals like, say, Tyler Pruitt and also Maciej Koper and also myself, we broadly agree with the results. So that was that. Yeah, I mean, even among the attendees, there were a few DIY enthusiasts who were using Kalman software to calibrate their own TVs. So I think it is really unfair to say that the audience is not knowledgeable. There were probably some of them, one or two, who are not really into TVs, but overall I believe that there's enough mix of knowledgeable and enthusiast audience in there with professionals mixed in. I mean, you can't get better than THX certified calibrators, voting at a shootout as well. So another criticism is that, why didn't we compare dynamic metadata? Why didn't we compare Dolby Vision? Well, I actually had the idea of doing that because there are a couple of titles out there that support both Dolby Vision and also HDR10+, and I was attempting to think of a way to compare these dynamic metadata formats, say displaying HDR10+ on the Samsung while displaying Dolby Vision on the LG, Panasonic, and also Sony. But there is a difference between the Dolby Vision implementation on the Sony AG9 and also the LG C9 and the Panasonic GZ2000, in that the Dolby Vision profile on the Sony AG9 is what is known as a player-led Dolby Vision implementation. And let's say if you try and send a Dolby Vision signal through a splitter to all three TVs to play back Dolby Vision, the player will be using the lowest common denominator, so it will actually detect that the Sony AG9 will be using player-led profile, and so it will be sending the Dolby Vision stream as a player-led stream, which will also impact on the TV-led profiles or implementations that are found on the Panasonic GZ2000 and also the LG C9, so it wouldn't be an accurate representation. So for an accurate representation, the way is to send a HDR10+ to the Samsung using one player and one disc, to send a Dolby Vision output to both the LG C9 and Panasonic GZ2000 using one player and one disc, and also send a separate Dolby Vision stream to the Sony AG9 with one player and one disc. Now you will need 3 players, which is not a problem, but you will also need 3 of the same disc. I already have 2 Robin Hood discs. I'm not going to buy a third one. I mean, the movie is already so good. I bought it twice. I don't think it is so good that I'll buy it thrice. But still, I think the logistics of trying to send and sync 3 discs in 3 different players to 4 TVs is too much of an ask. So let's say maybe next year or the year after, when Samsung decide to join Dolby Vision, then we can revisit the dynamic metadata argument again. And then, right, there were someone who complained that, you know, we didn't set the TVs correctly, that on the football clip, the Sony showed a distorted image. But I didn't think that was the case. I actually even paused the frame specifically to try and address some concerns among the attendees that, you know, the lines of the football field didn't look similar between the sets. I think what they were seeing were parallax effect, in that, you know, when you stand in a spot and when you look at lines from different angles, they will look different. I specifically paused on a scene of football and I showed the attendees that the corners were exactly the same markings were exactly the same. And if there were any slight differences, it's because the tape we used on, let's say, certain sets were covering just a bit of the screen, causing people to think that, you know, maybe we have set overscan wrongly, maybe we have not disabled pixel shifting. That was not the case. We took extra care to disable overscan. We took extra care to disable pixel shifting. And I think there were a few people who also commented that, you know, during the standard definition content, some sets were overscanned, and that is correct, because the Samsung Q90R and also the LG C9, they don't allow for overscan to be totally disabled when presented with 576i content, and that's what they saw. Obviously, I didn't point it out, but I think, you know, viewers who picked it up when I made that comment that overscan cannot be disabled on some sets, I was referring to standard definition content, whereas the football that was shown was in 1080i high definition resolution, and therefore overscan can be completely switched off. And if people were seeing distorted images, it is a result of parallax effect, and also maybe the bezel masking actually obscuring just a bit of the picture. And then, yes, and someone actually who attended said that, you know, the whole results shouldn't be taken seriously. It is just a bit of fun. Well, it's easy, obviously, for you to say that, but, you know, to say that it is a bit of fun is, I think, you know, a bit disrespectful to the time and effort that has been put into this event. And, you know, I take this event very seriously. You know, we 3 professional calibrators, some of them flying in from the States and flying in from Warsaw, you know, booking their own hotels and travel to help out with this event. So to dismiss it as just a bit of fun, I think it is very disrespectful. The time and effort that Crampton and Moore have put in, that I personally have put in. You know, I actually visited the lead store of Crampton and Moore almost every day over the last week to make sure that all these TVs are tuned and compared to the highest quality, so that, you know, I'm fair to all the sets, that I'm not actually putting any sets at a disadvantage. I'm not handicapping any sets. And for people to say that, you know, it is all a bit of fun, I think, I mean, it just, you know, it makes me feel a bit downhearted. And manufacturers take this event very seriously as well. Previous winners have been parading their awards at IFA press conferences. They have been parading the awards at retail shops. And if it is a bit of fun and it is not to be taken seriously, then maybe next year, you know, I won't, you know, arrange a shootout again. But yes, and, you know, there were criticisms that why is gaming included, because without the inclusion of gaming category, maybe the Panasonic GZ2000 could have won as the best overall TV. Well, the gaming category actually has been in our shootout, the UK TV shootout, for the past 2 years, since 2017. So 2017, 2018, and 2019, we have always included a gaming category. And also, manufacturers themselves are always striving to improve input lag, to improve the picture quality of their game modes. So let's say, for instance, LG Electronics this year has unlocked the SDR game mode on their sets to allow for full calibration rather than fix the color gamut to white. So gaming is taken seriously by the manufacturers. It is taken seriously by some of the owners, and I think that it should be represented in the overall score. Also, gaming industry as a whole is even bigger than the, say, film industry. So it has been taken into account in the shootout, and I believe it should be taken into account in the future as well. And if you think that, obviously the gaming is not important to you, then yeah, the Panasonic GZ2000 won the best home theater TV and the best living room TV. You can just pick and choose yourself. There's no need to criticize and denigrate the entire scoring system because gaming is included. And last but not least is the comparison with the Value Electronics shootout, where I understand that the Sony A9G, as it is known there, won the shootout ahead of the LG C9. Again, I want to stress many differences between the UK TV shootout and also the US shootout. First of all, it is basically a blinded shootout versus the US shootout where all the TVs are known. I think in a blinded shootout, we can genuinely eliminate any brand bias, however subconscious. Let's say if you know which TV is which, and then you saw similar picture quality between two sets, but subconsciously you maybe give, say, higher score to Sony or Panasonic because of their heritage, because of their branding, because of their traditional prowess in video processing. Whereas in a totally blinded shootout, people genuinely didn't know which is which. And I think at the end, when all the TVs were unveiled, there was a genuine gasp among the crowd, because I think many people thought that TVC, which was obviously blinded, no one knew that it was the LG until it was revealed. But many people thought that TVC was the Panasonic because they thought that the Panasonic would produce the best picture. But when the TVs were eventually unveiled, many people were shocked that TVC was actually the LG. And it just goes to show that the blinded shootout worked to a certain extent. No one actually knew which TV was which. No one knew what they were actually voting for. And I think that it is fair result in the end. Also, it depends on the content being chosen for the shootout. For my shootout, I purposely wanted to avoid using test patterns and avoid using the excellent Spears and Mansell UHD HDR benchmark disc to highlight the differences between the sets. I wanted to use real-life content, which is why I've trawled through, I've purposely watched so many different movies without actually enjoying the movies. Basically, I just bought the disc, fast forwarded through them, basically spoiling the movies for myself. But that's a sacrifice I have to make to try and find scenes that will highlight the differences, the video processing, the tone mapping differences between the sets, so that they can be properly compared without the attendees knowing which is which. So let's say if you just play run-of-the-mill titles without actually finding specific scenes that will highlight the differences, obviously the differences will be less. And obviously because of perhaps some brand bias, even among, let's say, professionals and seasoned industry experts, there's brand bias, however subtle. And let's say you saw two pictures that were very similar, but you wanted to really differentiate it, maybe the Sony would be scored higher than, let's say, the LG. So that may explain the differences in results between the US shootout and the UK TV shootout. And I think, in the future, I obviously will continue doing UK TV shootout, but, if there is any, say, enthusiasm or any welcome for me to participate in the US shootout, then I'm more than up for it. But I will only participate in a shootout, I will only host a shootout if I have complete control over the scoring criteria and also the the content that is used, because I believe that I have in-depth knowledge about the sets. I have in-depth knowledge about the, say, metadata that is implemented on this. I have in-depth knowledge about how bright it should be, how to match a reference broadcast monitor. And congratulations again to LG Electronics for taking home the best TV of 2019 in this blinded shootout this year. If you found this video useful, please click the like button and subscribe to the HDTVTest YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.